You thought you'd never see me again, didn't you? Well, too bad. I'm alive.
So, some time ago, and I'm pretty sure I'm late to the party on this one, a couple of gaming sites released a few articles in regards to the recent release of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You know, probably no big deal, just probably explaining as to how good the game was, I guess you could say. However, and I shit you not, some went over a specific topic that questions whether or not the Assassin's Creed multiplayer installment may be coming back, may being the key word here. Now, being the guy who loves Assassin's Creed altogether, I can't help but feel a bit iffy over the points that were given as I read over the articles that covered the point specifically. So let's just go ahead and talk about it for just a moment, take it all out of context, and see what we can get from it. Now, seeing as how I'm still a casual for Assassin's Creed to this day, it was quite obvious that I was going to make some sort of mediocre video over this topic. So, before you cock your Glocks and hold me at gunpoint, just hear me out. For 4 years now, the multiplayer aspect of Assassin's Creed has been equivalent to that of a dry well. The only bucket of water we've managed to acquire to quench our thirst would be the cooperative aspect that Unity has implemented. However, due to the initial launch of the game, it was more or less short-lived due to the constant glitches and bugs that the game once had, among other obvious reasons. Even after the humongous patch update, individuals seem to have given it no thoughts whatsoever and have altogether lost faith in what was once Assassin's Creed. I can only assume that ever since then, Ubisoft has been concerned with the state of its game and have been trying to improve upon it ever since then. Or maybe it's all for the pure purpose of marketing so that a quick buck could have been made. Either way, people were pissed off and that was a no-go. Since this is coming from the perspective of an amateur content creator, I can only assume that's probably why the multiplayer aspect has been dropped after Black Flag. One of two things could have happened. Either fans are starting to get bored of the same old from the installment that's been going on for years now, mind you, or maybe Ubi didn't want the same thing to happen to it and wanted to bring it back in better ways after some time. Or maybe they just wanted to focus solely on the single player aspect so people wouldn't get confused from the game overall. I know a few of you are probably laughing behind your screens at this point, but someone had to go ahead and say it. In the articles, respectively, Sergei Haskowait, Ubisoft's chief creative officer, has stated that while the current Assassin's Creed games have no multiplayer, obviously, it's still very important for the social aspect of gaming, so it's something that they're looking into. They have many technologies at their disposal, so it's case by case at this point. And I'm pretty sure technology is just another term for the equipment that they're utilizing currently for other projects. But getting back to the original statement, Haskell would continue on and mention that the company is trying to understand as to how and why games such as Fortnite, for example, the biggest example of them all, is bringing home the figurative bacon and why people are so interested in the concepts behind it, which is understandable. It's also worth noting that by no means do they want to try to copy the Battle Royale idea from other companies that have already implemented it. Instead, they're trying to be original with the content they already have, but due to past games and the ideas they already have at hand, this may be proven otherwise. Nowadays, a lot of gamers are not interested in the story and narrative that defines what a game should be, unfortunately. They're more than likely interested in the competitive atmosphere of it all, beating the shit out of other players and claiming the accommodations that they so desperately desire, and Assassin's Creed multiplayer is no different by no means at all. But it's from that one simple idea, that one simple ass concept, that made it work and was well received by multiple critics, despite what most individuals thought would not be doable to begin with. The entire series revolves around one element and one element only, which is stealth. Although there were times where the game may have, made it a bit difficult to use such element to your advantage and may have confused you a bit. It's a classic cat and mouse scenario. Find your target, kill your target, and avoid getting killed all at the same time. In other words, it was basically survival of the fittest. The game doesn't reward you with the quantity of kills that you've acquired, instead it rewards you based on the quality of the kills you've acquired. Now, unless you happen to play Artifact Assault or Domination, where all logic is thrown out the window in those game modes, quality will always outweigh the quantity every single time. That's what made it both unique and different. I know a majority of you are going to say that most of us have used and abused the ethics of stealth to our own advantage, but hey, at the end of the day, if it proved to be effective, then we gladly went along with it. No questions asked, no answers needed. In this case, let's go ahead and use Assassin's Creed Brotherhood as an example. Being the first and oldest of the multiplayer series, it was a stepping stone to a series that would eventually attract a lot of attention later on, and also manage to set a wide array of standards that the other installments will take up. More or less, I guess you could say. At the time, it was hard at first for most people to adjust to. It was difficult. You only had a couple of tutorial sessions and that was about it. Afterwards, the rest was up to you to learn, but it's from that learning process that made it worthwhile. You were bound to make mistakes along the way with the defeats and fails that came along with it, but learning from those mistakes is what slightly made you better. You knew what you were up against, you knew what tools to bring to the table, you knew which opportunities to take when the moments were right. That's how most of the player base evolved. They watched not only themselves but others in the process. Techniques started to develop, playstyles were made up. It made you think just like any other multiplayer game would make you do, or life in general. Simple. Sergei Haskowitz stated that Ubisoft has the technology to make all of this possible, and while Assassin's Creed Unity may not be the best example to use due to obvious reasons, the tech that they utilized was an example to show that if they put just a bit more time into their projects, that it would come out much better than expected. The same would also apply for Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Origins, and the newly released Odyssey. The potential is limitless, to be quite honest, and as long as they don't stress themselves out and work themselves to the bone, then who knows what the future could bring to all of us. So at the end of this dumbass rant, the only thing I hope that Ubisoft will consider in the long run is figuring out one of two things: what's good overall and should stay, as opposed to what's bad and should be improved upon in regards to the multiplayer aspect, or just tossed aside altogether, either or. Sergei mentioned that he wants for the series to come back with a refreshed approach. In other words, we can tell this may or may not be different, just like the single player aspect. Only time will tell, of course. It's also during this time that I hope that if they do come back with a multiplayer installment once more, that it doesn't, turn new player friendly, I guess you could say, for those who are interested in the multiplayer altogether. It's nothing wrong with newcomers, but at the same time, I wouldn't want for the dial to be turned all the way down as it was in 3 just to please people who will show a bit of interest in the multiplayer series. I feel as though that, they have to go through the process of learning how to play with the mistakes that they made along the way. There's nothing wrong with that. It's fun, but at the same time, it's like, I necessarily don't want to get accommodations easy just because others want to. It's like what my friend Analogous Prune always told me: newcomers are like a double-edged sword. They can either help or hinder you in the process. But yeah, other than that, that's about it. Love you all and peace. Also, 100 players in Assassin's Creed is a no-go. It would literally be the biggest round of assassinate known to man. Deadass.